Intuitive Eating, 3rd edition, by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. Picture this scene for a moment. A woman named Sandra walks into an office. She's not there for a job interview or even a typical doctor's visit. No, she's there because she's completely exhausted. She looks across the desk and says something that sounds almost desperate. "I just can't do another diet. You're literally my last hope." Here's the thing about Sandra. She's been dieting her whole life. She's basically a professional at this point. Atkins? Done it. South Beach? Tried it. The Zone? Been there. Even that weird grapefruit diet? Yep, that too. And you know what's tragic? Each one started with this rush of excitement, this feeling of, finally, this is the one that's going to work. Spoiler alert, it never was. Like a boomerang she kept throwing away, the weight always found its way back, usually bringing along a few extra pounds as souvenirs. What the authors call this moment is hitting diet bottom. It's this place of quiet desperation where you're more obsessed with food than you've ever been, yet you feel completely powerless to do anything about it. Sandra felt ridiculous. She kept thinking, at my age, shouldn't I have figured this out by now? But here's what Sandra didn't realize, and honestly, what most of us never figure out. The very thing she was using to fix her problem was actually creating it. Dieting had turned food into the enemy. It taught her that eating meant feeling guilty. It slowed her metabolism down to a crawl. And worst of all, it trapped her in this exhausting cycle of hope and disappointment that slowly chipped away at who she was, year after miserable year. Today, we're going to explore the way out. We're diving into a revolutionary book called Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. This isn't just another book telling you what to eat. Think of it more as a key that unlocks the prison door of chronic dieting. For over 25 years, this book has quietly sparked a revolution, selling millions of copies and launching a movement that's now backed by solid scientific evidence. The authors, both registered dietitians, discovered something that was hiding in plain sight. Our bodies already know how to eat. We're all born with this wisdom built right in. By the time we're done here, you're going to understand the biggest lie that the $60 billion weight loss industry has been selling you. You'll discover 10 principles that can help you unlearn all those damaging diet rules, make genuine peace with food, and finally trust your own body again. This isn't about swapping one set of rules for another. It's about returning to a wisdom you were born with. It's about freedom. So let's begin this journey together. Have you ever really stopped to think about how absurd the diet industry actually is? We're talking about an industry with a failure rate of over 95%. Let that number sit with you for a second. If literally any other product failed 95% of the time, it would be yanked off the shelves immediately. If your mechanic failed to fix your car 95 times out of 100, you wouldn't sit there thinking, gosh, I must be a bad car owner. You'd find a new mechanic. Yet when a diet fails us, which it almost always does, who gets the blame? We do. We tell ourselves we didn't have enough willpower. We weren't disciplined enough. We weren't good enough. This is the crazy-making paradox of dieting. We never blame the process itself. We blame ourselves, over and over and over again. Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch saw this pattern constantly in their own practices. They were trained nutritionists, creating these perfect, personalized meal plans for their clients. And at first, it seemed to work beautifully. Clients lost weight, goals were achieved, everyone was happy. But then, inevitably, the phone calls would start coming in. Somehow, the clients would say, their voices heavy with shame and apology, the weight came back. I just couldn't stick to the plan. It became crystal clear to the authors that something was fundamentally broken about this whole approach. Their good intentions were actually reinforcing this terrible belief in their patients that they were failures, that they couldn't be trusted around food. This realization became the seed from which intuitive eating grew. It's like a bridge between the body-positive world that says love yourself as you are, and the health-conscious world that says watch what you eat. It asks this simple but profound question: what if the problem isn't the food, and it isn't you? What if the problem is the entire rule book you've been forced to follow? The journey starts by understanding the real damage that rule book has caused. The authors call it diet backlash. It's basically a collection of side effects that pile up after years of dieting. You might recognize some of these. The moment you even think about starting a new diet, suddenly you get these intense cravings for all the foods you know will be forbidden. It's called the Last Supper effect. You find yourself eating more, not less, in the days before day one of the diet. It's like your mind is throwing one last frantic party, a farewell tour for your favorite foods, because you genuinely believe you might never get to eat them again. Or maybe you start withdrawing from social situations. A party or dinner out with friends becomes this anxiety-inducing minefield of temptations, so it just feels safer to stay home. You might feel like you can't trust yourself around food anymore. Every diet that failed has taught you, little by little, to stop listening to your body's signals. And here's perhaps the most frustrating symptom of all. Your metabolism actually slows down. With each diet, your body learns to survive on less and less. It becomes incredibly efficient at holding on to every single calorie, preparing itself for the next self-imposed famine. It's not being stubborn. It's a biological defense mechanism. Your body doesn't know you're trying to fit into a smaller size. It genuinely thinks it's starving. This is what makes dieting like a Chinese finger puzzle. The harder you try to pull away, the harder you try to control and restrict everything, the tighter the trap becomes. You simply cannot fight your own biology. The desire to be thinner leads to dieting. Dieting leads to cravings and this gnawing feeling of being deprived. That deprivation eventually leads to giving in, to what feels like losing all control and overeating. And that leads to regaining the weight, which brings you right back to square one, wanting to be thinner. It's this perfect, closed loop that gets worse with every turn of the cycle. So if that's the trap, how do we actually get out? The first step is recognizing what kind of eater dieting has turned you into. The authors identify several eating personalities that most of us fall into, even when we're not officially on a diet. See if any of these sound painfully familiar. First up is the careful eater. On the surface, this person looks like they've got it all figured out. They're super nutrition conscious. They scrutinize every label, interrogate waiters about ingredients, and seem to have mastered healthy eating. But underneath that surface, there's this constant hum of anxiety. They agonize over every single bite. They might be good all week long, only to completely blow it all weekend, which backfires spectacularly and leaves them drowning in guilt, already planning their next diet. Their entire relationship with food is governed by vigilance and worry. Then, there's the professional dieter. This one's easier to spot. They're always on some kind of diet. They've tried whatever bestseller just came out, the new celebrity plan, whatever gimmick they saw on television last night. They know everything about calories, carbs, points, macros, you name it. But here's the irony. The very reason they're always starting a new diet is because the last one never actually worked. When they're not actively on a diet, they're mentally planning the next one they'll start. For them, eating a forbidden food triggers what's called the what the hell effect. Well, I've already blown it, might as well finish this entire pint of ice cream. I'll start fresh tomorrow. Finally, there's the unconscious eater. This is the person who's often eating while doing something else. Watching television, scrolling through their phone, working, driving. Eating gets paired with another activity, so they're often not fully aware of what they're consuming or how much. There are actually a few subtypes here. The chaotic eater, whose overscheduled chaotic life means they're just grabbing whatever's available whenever they can, often going way too long without eating until they're absolutely ravenous. The refuse-not eater, who's vulnerable to any food that's simply there. The candy jar at the office, the donuts at the meeting, whatever. The waste-not eater, who feels this compulsion to clean their plate, and probably everyone else's too, because they hate wasting food. And the emotional eater, who uses food to cope with uncomfortable feelings like stress, loneliness, boredom, or anger. All of these eating styles are, in their own way, still forms of dieting. They're all governed by external rules, by guilt, by this fundamental mistrust of your own body. They're all working against you. But there is another way, an identity you actually were born with, before the world taught you to be afraid of food. The intuitive eater. Intuitive eaters march to the beat of their own internal hunger signals. They eat what they want without drowning in guilt. They honor their hunger and respect their fullness. Think about a toddler for a second. Toddlers are natural intuitive eaters. They don't know anything about calories or carbs or whether something is clean eating. They eat when they're hungry. They stop when they're full. Sometimes they eat a ton. Sometimes they barely touch their plate. But over the course of a week, study after study shows, it all balances out naturally. They have this innate wisdom built in, but as we grow up, that wisdom gets buried. It gets buried under a mountain of external pressures. Clean your plate. You can't be hungry. You just ate an hour ago. Saturday morning commercials for sugary cereal. Magazine covers promising a brand new beach body in 30 days or less. These messages slowly but surely teach us to stop listening to our own internal cues and start listening to external rules instead. Dieting is the final nail in the coffin. It systematically erodes your trust in your own body, replacing your inner wisdom with a rigid set of instructions that are basically designed to fail. So the journey of this book isn't about learning a new set of rules to follow. It's about unlearning the old ones. Think of it as an excavation project, digging through all the rubble of past diets to rediscover the intuitive eater that's been inside you all along, patiently waiting. This journey is guided by 10 core principles. They're not meant to be a rigid step-by-step plan, but rather a series of profound shifts in perspective that, when taken together, create a peaceful and healthy relationship with food. The very first principle is the foundation for absolutely everything else. Reject the diet mentality. This is often the scariest step for people. It means literally throwing out the diet books, the magazine articles, the calorie-counting apps, and yes, even the bathroom scale. It means getting genuinely angry at all the lies that made you feel like a failure. You have to let go of the hope, even that tiny, stubborn sliver of hope, that some magical new diet is just around the corner waiting to save you. Because as long as you hold on to that hope, even just a little bit, you will never be truly free. You might feel a wave of panic. If I stop dieting, won't I just eat everything in sight? I don't even know how to eat if I'm not following a plan. These fears are completely normal and totally understandable. But here's the reality. Dieting itself is often the very thing that triggers overeating in the first place. It's a completely normal, biological response to starvation. Once your body truly learns, and more importantly, truly trusts, that it will no longer be starved, that intense primal drive to eat will begin to calm down naturally. This first principle, requires you to really recognize and acknowledge the damage dieting has caused. It slows down your metabolism. It increases binging and creates intense cravings. It makes your natural satiety cues basically atrophy, so you no longer even know when you're genuinely full. Psychologically, it erodes your confidence and self-trust. It's linked to feelings of failure, social anxiety, and in many cases, full-blown eating disorders. Recognizing all of this is the crucial first step in your paradigm shift. If dieting is actually the problem, then how on earth can it ever be part of the solution? Once you've made that commitment to reject dieting, the next principle helps you start actually listening to your body again. This is Principle 2, honor your hunger. This sounds simple enough, but for a chronic dieter, it's absolutely revolutionary. A dieting body is literally a starving body. Your cells don't know you're voluntarily restricting food. They just know there's a famine happening, and your body is brilliantly, ruthlessly designed to fight famine. When you don't get enough energy, your body compensates with these powerful biological and psychological mechanisms specifically designed to make you eat. The authors point to this landmark starvation study conducted during World War II. Healthy men were put on what they called a semi-starvation diet, consuming about 1,500 calories a day, which, by the way, is the same amount as many modern weight loss diets recommend. The effects were absolutely startling. Their metabolisms dropped by 40%. They became completely obsessed with food, collecting recipes, talking about it constantly, literally dreaming about it at night. Their personalities changed dramatically. They became irritable, moody, anxious, and depressed. And when the study finally ended, and they were allowed to eat freely again, their hunger was basically insatiable. They found it incredibly difficult to stop eating. This wasn't some failure of willpower or character. This was pure biology. This was a primal drive to survive kicking into high gear. Your body has a similar response, even on a smaller scale. When you skip a meal or go too long without eating, you trigger this exact same primal drive. Your brain starts producing a chemical called neuropeptide Y, which specifically triggers cravings for carbohydrates, your body's preferred, most efficient source of energy. This is exactly why undereating in the morning or afternoon so often leads to completely overeating at night. It's not a character flaw or a lack of discipline. It's literally brain chemistry doing its job. So honoring your hunger becomes the first real step in rebuilding trust with your body. It means learning to listen for those gentle, early signals of hunger, not waiting until you're so ravenously hungry you could eat a small horse. Mild gnawing in your stomach, feeling a little lightheaded, having difficulty concentrating. These are your body's polite early requests for fuel. When you actually respond to them promptly, you send this powerful message to your body: I will feed you, you're safe, you don't need to panic. This leads us directly to the flip side of that equation, which is Principle 5, feel your fullness. For most chronic dieters, the only kind of fullness they even recognize anymore is being uncomfortably stuffed. That subtle signal of comfortably satisfied has been completely lost. Why? Because dieting literally teaches you to clean your plate. When you're only allowed a small, prescribed portion, you eat every single bite of it. You stop eating not when your body signals it's had enough, but when the food physically runs out on your plate. Respecting your fullness is really about learning to listen again. It requires you to pause in the middle of a meal. This isn't making a commitment to stop eating right then and there. It's just a brief timeout, a moment to genuinely check in with yourself. You ask yourself two simple questions. First, a taste check. How does this food actually taste right now? Is it still as delicious and satisfying as that first amazing bite? You'll be genuinely amazed how often the answer is no. The pleasure we get from a food often diminishes significantly as we continue eating it. Second, a satiety check. What's my fullness level right now? Is my hunger going away? Am I beginning to feel genuinely satisfied? In the beginning, this feels super awkward and forced. But with practice, you start to recognize that subtle shift from hungry to satisfied. You begin to identify what the authors beautifully call the last bite threshold, that point where you just know the bite currently in your mouth is going to be your last. But here's the crucial connection. You absolutely cannot truly feel your fullness until you embrace Principle 3, make peace with food. How can you possibly leave food on your plate if part of you genuinely believes you'll never be allowed to eat it again? You simply can't. The fear of future deprivation will always make you eat more right now. Making peace with food means giving yourself unconditional permission to eat all foods, every single one. There are no good foods and bad foods anymore. A piece of chocolate cake becomes as emotionally neutral as eating a peach. This idea is absolutely terrifying for most people. If I give myself permission to eat chocolate whenever I want, I'll never stop eating it. But the authors argue, and the research backs them up, that the exact opposite is actually true. The very act of forbidding a food gives it immense, almost magical power. It becomes tantalizing, special, irresistible, forbidden fruit. The moment you put a food on the banned list, it builds this craving that takes on a life of its own. Think about Heidi, one of their clients who called herself a chocoholic. She genuinely believed that if she started eating chocolate, she physically couldn't stop. So her solution was to simply never allow herself to have it, ever. But this created this vicious, destructive cycle. She would inevitably give in at some point, and when she did, she believed deep down it was going to be the absolute last time. This triggered classic Last Supper eating behavior. She would consume huge amounts of chocolate in one sitting, feeling guilty and completely out of control the entire time, which only reinforced her core belief that chocolate was this dangerous, forbidden food she simply couldn't handle. The solution for Heidi was to systematically, and with professional support, make genuine peace with chocolate, to allow herself to have it whenever she wanted, to keep it in her house, and to truly deeply believe that it would always be available to her whenever she wanted it. And you know what happened? Something funny. The urgency completely disappeared. That frantic, out-of-control feeling just vanished. When chocolate was no longer forbidden, it lost its power over her. She could have a piece or two and feel genuinely satisfied, then move on with her day. This process is really about proving to yourself that you actually can be trusted around all foods. But to do that successfully, you have to challenge that harsh voice in your head that keeps insisting you can't. This brings us to Principle 4. Challenge the food police. The food police is that voice in your head, your harshest inner critic. It's basically the sum total of all the dieting rules you've ever learned in your entire life. It's the voice that says you're good for eating a salad and bad for eating a cookie. It shouts negative judgments and guilt-provoking accusations at you constantly. It's a deeply destructive voice, and learning to chase it away is an absolutely critical step. The authors introduce us to this whole cast of inner voices that influence our eating decisions. There's the food police, acting as the harsh judge and jury. There's the nutrition informant, which weaponizes nutrition facts to back up whatever the food police is saying. That has way too many grams of fat. And there's the diet rebel, that defiant voice that screams, "Forget you," and makes you eat an entire pizza just because someone dared to suggest you should have the salad instead. When you eat a brownie, the food police immediately jumps in. You've completely blown it. You have zero willpower. You're so bad. This makes you feel deeply ashamed and defeated, and those terrible feelings very often lead directly to eating even more brownies. The what the hell effect kicks into high gear. But what if you actually challenge that thought pattern? What if the nurturer steps in instead and says, "It's totally okay to have a brownie. It was delicious and satisfying. I'm content now." The feeling isn't guilt anymore. It's genuine pleasure, and the behavior that follows isn't mindlessly eating the whole pan. It's enjoying the one brownie and then moving on with your life. Your thoughts directly create your feelings, and your feelings are what drive your behaviors. By deliberately changing your thoughts, you genuinely can change everything. As you start to actively challenge these old rules and make genuine peace with food, you open the door to a new and genuinely powerful experience. This is Principle 6. Discover the satisfaction factor. In our collective rush to be thin and healthy, we've somehow completely forgotten one of the most basic, fundamental gifts of eating: pleasure. The Japanese, the authors note, actually include pleasure as one of their official national goals for healthy living. When you eat what you really genuinely want in an environment that feels inviting and pleasant, the satisfaction you get from that experience is an incredibly powerful force. It helps you feel truly content. And when you're genuinely satisfied, it takes much less food overall to feel like you've had enough. Think about how many times you've eaten a boring rice cake when what you really wanted was a cookie. Did that rice cake actually satisfy you? Or did you find yourself wandering around the kitchen afterward, eating one healthy substitute after another, basically chasing this phantom food that you never actually allowed yourself to have? In the end, you often consume way more calories from all those unsatisfying substitutes than you would have from just eating the actual cookie you wanted in the first place. Real satisfaction comes from asking yourself this crucial question: what do I really want to eat right now? And it's not just about taste either. It's about texture. Do you want something crunchy or creamy or chewy? It's about temperature. Do you want something hot or cold? It's about aroma and visual appeal. It's about eating slowly enough, mindfully enough, to actually savor the entire experience. Here's a motto worth living by: if you don't love it, don't eat it. And if you love it, truly savor it. This simple idea is absolutely revolutionary for someone who's been dieting. It means you don't have to finish a meal just because it happens to be on your plate. If the dessert you ordered turns out to be mediocre and disappointing, you have complete permission to just stop eating it. You are not obligated to finish food that isn't actually giving you pleasure. When you prioritize genuine satisfaction, you'll find you naturally eat far less overall, because each eating experience becomes richer and more complete. Of course, we all know that sometimes we eat for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with physical hunger or satisfaction. This brings us to Principle 7. Cope with your emotions without using food. From literally our very first day of life, food gets linked with emotion. A crying infant gets soothed with a breast or a bottle. A scraped knee gets comforted with a cookie. A victory gets celebrated with ice cream. Food becomes love, comfort, reward. It can become this reliable friend, sometimes even our only friend, in moments of real pain. And you know what? There's nothing inherently wrong with this, up to a point. But when food becomes your primary coping mechanism, or worse, your only coping mechanism, it can turn into a really destructive cycle. Food can't actually fix anxiety, loneliness, boredom, or anger. It might offer some short-term comfort, a brief distraction from whatever pain you're feeling, but the actual problem will still be sitting there waiting for you when you're done eating, now accompanied by the physical discomfort of being overly full and the heavy emotional weight of guilt. The key here is to first learn how to distinguish between genuine biological hunger and emotional hunger. When you find yourself reaching for food when your body isn't actually physically hungry, just pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? And then follow up with, what do I genuinely need? Maybe you're bored. What you actually need isn't food at all. It's stimulation, engagement, something interesting to do. Maybe you're lonely. What you need is real human connection. Maybe you're just exhausted. What you need is rest, not a snack. No amount of food will ever satisfy a need that isn't actually hunger. This principle is really about building yourself a whole toolbox of new, healthier coping strategies. It's about learning to nurture yourself in ways that don't involve food. Taking a walk outside, calling a friend to chat, writing in a journal, taking a long, hot bath. It's about learning to actually sit with your feelings, even the really uncomfortable ones, knowing with confidence that they will eventually pass. It's about recognizing that overeating is often just a red flag, a signal that something else in your life genuinely needs attention. All of these principles we've talked about, making peace with food, honoring your hunger, challenging that food police voice, they all require this fundamental shift in how you see and relate to your body. This is Principle 8, respect your body. You absolutely cannot be at peace with food if you're constantly at war with your own body. For every negative thought you have about your body, the food police gain more power, and the temptation to start just one more diet grows stronger and stronger. Respecting your body means accepting your genetic blueprint, your basic body type. Just as you wouldn't realistically expect to squeeze a size 8 foot into a size 6 shoe, it's equally futile to expect your body to conform to some unrealistic, maybe even impossible ideal. Now, this doesn't mean you have to suddenly love every single part of your body overnight. For most people, that's honestly too big a leap to make. The authors suggest starting with something more achievable: respect. Respect means treating your body with basic dignity. It means meeting its fundamental needs. It means genuinely believing your body deserves to be fed properly. It deserves to be touched with affection. It deserves to be dressed in clothes that are actually comfortable right now, not squeezed into clothes that are 10 pounds too small as some kind of motivator. It means quitting what they call the body check game, that constant, silent comparison you're doing every single time you walk into a room. It means stopping the body bashing, that relentless stream of criticism about your thighs or your stomach or whatever. And it means finally saying goodbye to that fantasy body you've been chasing for years. You may actually need to mourn the loss of the body you thought you should have, to genuinely make peace with the body you actually do have. Here's something ironic the authors discovered. When people finally stop fighting their bodies and start genuinely respecting them, they naturally begin to take much better care of them. The focus shifts completely from punishing the body through restriction to actually nourishing it with care. And when you truly respect your body, you start to feel this genuine desire to move it in ways that actually feel good. This leads us naturally to Principle 9, exercise, feel the difference. Notice the specific word choice here. It's not exercise, burn those calories, or exercise, punish yourself for eating. For chronic dieters, exercise has often become just another form of punishment. It's the penance you have to pay for the sin of eating. It's a chore, done with the sole goal of weight loss. And if you're also dieting at the same time, you're under-eating, which means you literally don't have the energy to exercise in a way that feels good. It feels like exhausting drudgery. So when the diet inevitably fails, the exercise habit stops too. This principle is about completely decoupling exercise from weight loss. It's about shifting your entire focus from the calorie-burning effect to how it actually feels to move your body in various ways. When you exercise, how does it genuinely affect your stress level, your overall energy throughout the day, your mood, the quality of your sleep at night? When you focus on these immediate, tangible benefits, instead of some number on a scale, exercise becomes its own reward. It stops being something you have to do and becomes something you genuinely get to do. It becomes a real way of taking care of yourself, of honoring your body. It stops feeling militant and controlling and becomes joyful movement instead. The goal isn't to burn off last night's meal anymore. It's to feel energized, strong, capable, and fully alive in your body. Finally, after you've worked your way through all these other principles, after you've rejected the diet mentality, learned to listen to your body's signals, made genuine peace with food, and started to respect yourself, only then are you truly ready for Principle 10, honor your health with gentle nutrition. This principle comes dead last for a very specific, very important reason. If you start with nutrition, if you jump straight to rules about what you should eat, you can way too easily turn it into just another diet. The nutrition informant teams right back up with the food police, and suddenly you're right back in the same trap you started in. But once you genuinely have a healthy, peaceful relationship with food, then you can start to make food choices that honor both your health and your taste buds, without it feeling like some kind of restriction. It's about progress, not perfection. Here's something crucial to remember. You will not get a nutrient deficiency or gain weight from one snack, one meal, or even one full day of eating whatever you want. It's what you eat consistently over time, the overall pattern, that actually matters for your health. Gentle nutrition is really about noticing and paying attention to how different foods actually make you feel. You start to genuinely realize that when you eat a balanced meal with protein, carbs, and healthy fats, you have much more sustained energy throughout the day than when you just eat straight sugar. You notice that when you eat plenty of colorful fruits and vegetables, you genuinely feel better overall. You don't make these choices because you should, or because some rule says so, but because you genuinely want to feel good in your body. This isn't about eliminating what the authors call play foods, the cookies, the chips, the ice cream, all of that. There's absolutely a place for those foods. They're part of a genuinely satisfying and pleasurable life. But when you become a true intuitive eater, those foods naturally lose their intense power over you. They don't call to you with the same urgency. You'll discover that the majority of your choices naturally become foods that nourish your body, with a smaller portion simply there for pure pleasure. And there's absolutely no guilt in either choice. The journey of intuitive eating isn't linear or straightforward. It's a process, with genuine ups and downs along the way. The authors describe 5 distinct stages people typically go through. Stage 1 is readiness. That crucial moment when you hit diet bottom and know with absolute certainty you cannot go on living this way. Stage 2 is exploration. This phase of heightened awareness where you're consciously, deliberately learning to listen to your hunger and satiety signals, and you're giving yourself that scary but absolutely necessary, unconditional permission to eat. Stage 3 is crystallization, where these new behaviors start to feel more natural and less awkward. Those obsessive thoughts about food begin to quiet down significantly. Stage 4 is when the intuitive eater genuinely awakens. Your eating style becomes free-flowing and natural. You easily choose what you want, eat until you're comfortably full, and stop without any second thoughts or guilt. And Stage 5 is treasuring the pleasure, At this point, you've genuinely reclaimed your birthright. You trust your body completely and naturally. Food has become a reliable source of both pleasure and nourishment, not a source of constant anxiety and internal war. You feel genuinely free. To bring this all home practically, the authors apply these exact same principles to raising children. They argue passionately that we absolutely must protect the inborn intuitive eater that exists in our kids. That means trusting them with their own bodies. It's the parent's job to provide a good variety of healthy, nourishing foods, and it's the child's job, not ours, to decide what and how much to actually eat from what's offered. When we restrict certain foods, especially those play foods, we actually make them more desirable and set our kids up for the exact same battles we've been facing. When we pressure them to eat more than they naturally want, we teach them to completely ignore their own fullness cues. The goal is to keep the dinner table a place of peace and connection, not turn it into a nightly battleground, and to model a genuinely healthy, joyful relationship with food and movement ourselves. At its absolute core, the science now clearly confirms what the authors knew from years of clinical experience. Intuitive eating is associated with a whole host of positive outcomes: lower BMIs, significantly better self-esteem, much higher body satisfaction, and dramatically reduced rates of disordered eating. It works, plain and simple, because it aligns with our natural biology instead of constantly fighting against it. The entire philosophy can really be summed up in just one single word: trust. Trust that your body genuinely knows what it's doing. Trust that you actually can handle having all foods available. Trust that your worth as a human being is not measured on a bathroom scale. And trust that by finally letting go of rigid control, you will finally, truly, be free. As we come to the end of our journey through intuitive eating, it's really worth taking a moment to let this core message truly sink in. In a world that is constantly screaming at us from every screen and every magazine cover that our bodies are problems desperately needing to be solved, this book offers this quiet but incredibly powerful whisper: you are not broken. The most profound lesson for me personally is this radical idea of trust. We live in this pervasive culture of mistrust. We're constantly taught to mistrust certain foods, to mistrust our natural appetites, and most damaging of all, to mistrust our own bodies. We're told repeatedly that our bodies are lazy and gluttonous by nature, and that without some rigid set of external rules, a diet plan, a point system, a calorie counting app, we would just completely spin out of control. Intuitive eating flips that entire narrative completely on its head. It suggests that the real problem isn't a lack of control at all. It's that we've been desperately trying to control the wrong thing this whole time. We've been trying to micromanage this incredibly complex system that is actually infinitely wise and beautifully self-regulating. The constant struggle, those exhausting cycles of restriction and binging, all that guilt, these aren't signs that our bodies are somehow broken or defective. They're the perfectly logical, totally predictable symptoms of a system that's being starved and then naturally rebelling against that starvation. They're the desperate cries of a body that is simply reasonably trying to survive. What makes this book so enduring, and honestly why it's more relevant today than it's ever been, is that it offers a genuine path forward that's not about piling on more rules. It's about systematically taking them away. It's a process of subtraction, of careful unlearning. It's about getting out of your overactive head and back into your wise body. The world has become even noisier and more complicated since this book was first written. We're constantly bombarded with "what I eat in a day" videos, with wellness gurus aggressively promoting detoxes and cleanses, And with this endless stream of conflicting information about good foods and bad foods, the pressure to perform health perfectly, to have an Instagram-worthy diet, has become yet another source of anxiety and stress. But intuitive eating gently reminds us that true health is absolutely not about achieving perfection. It's about attunement with your body. It's about flexibility and adaptation. It's about pleasure and satisfaction. So how can you actually start to apply this in your own life, starting today? It doesn't have to be some massive, overwhelming overhaul of everything. This journey genuinely starts with a single, small, manageable step. Here are a few simple, practical actions you can take right now. First, just for the next 24 hours, try pausing briefly before you eat anything at all. Take one deep breath and simply ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hungry am I right now? Don't judge whatever answer comes up. Don't change what you're about to eat. Just notice. Pay attention. This is the very first step in learning to listen to your body's signals again after years of ignoring them. Second, try to identify just one food police rule that's currently living rent-free in your head. Maybe it's, don't eat anything after 8 p.m., or carbs are bad and will make you fat, or I have to earn my dessert by exercising first. Just identify one single rule. Write it down somewhere, and then ask yourself this simple question. Says who? Gently, curiously challenge its authority over you. You don't have to immediately break the rule if that feels too scary, but simply questioning it, examining it, begins to loosen its grip on you. And third, the very next time you eat something you truly, genuinely enjoy, try to eat just the first 3 bites without any distractions whatsoever. No phone scrolling, no television, no book, no computer. Just for 3 bites, focus completely and entirely on the taste, the texture, the temperature, the aroma. Really notice the pleasure of it. This is how you begin to rediscover what they call the satisfaction factor. These small, simple acts of awareness are genuinely the seeds from which an entirely new relationship with food can grow and flourish. It's a process that requires real patience and, above all else, deep self-compassion. That was a summary of Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. We've explored the core principles together today, but I'll be completely honest with you. A summary like this can really only show you the map. The real adventure, the real transformation, happens when you actually decide to take the journey yourself by reading the full book. It's in those quiet moments of reading, when a particular story, or even just a simple phrase resonates deeply with a part of you that you thought you'd completely forgotten about. This summary is your starting point, a way to see if this particular path is one you genuinely want to walk. If anything we've discussed together today has sparked even a small feeling of hope or curiosity in you, I genuinely encourage you to grab a copy of the actual book. Reading it isn't just about passively learning information. It's an active experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself, your body, and your plate for the rest of your life. A link to the book is waiting for you in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and helpful, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next journey into another, potentially life-changing book. Every single subscription helps us continue bringing these powerful ideas to more people who need them. Let's keep learning and growing together on this journey.